In the summer of 1974 in West Germany, the Dutch national team, also known as the Orange Storm, thrilled fans around the world, writing an incredible journey at the World Cup, with a generation of exceptionally talented players and a style of total football, fiery attack, solid defense, and masterful positional interchangeability. They not only achieved success in terms of playing style, but also became an unforgettable part of the memories of an entire generation of football lovers. Although they lost in the fateful final, they were honored as champions in the hearts of fans. But behind those glorious moments on the pitch are players with very different fates. 50 years have passed. Time has carved different traces on their lives. Some continue to conquer new heights. Some choose a quiet path after retirement, and there are also those who had to stop their journey in tragedy. Let's look back at the ups and downs of the players who made up the soul of the golden generation of the Netherlands that year. Neeskens was the warrior who protected the artist named Cruyff. At 22, he was the perpetual motion machine of the Orange Storm, standing out with his fiery fighting spirit, his ability to tackle aggressively, but also with great technique. His opening penalty kick in the 1974 final was the clearest proof of his steely character. Strong, direct, and fearless. Neeskens' career was closely linked to his senior Cruyff when he followed St. Johan to Barcelona and then to the New York Cosmos. He was affectionately called Johan Segon, Johan II by Catalan fans, not only because of his name, but also because of his dedication. After retiring, Neeskens chose the coaching path, traveling everywhere from Switzerland, Australia to South Africa, spreading his love of football to sow seeds in faraway lands. He lived a life without the noise of contemporary stars, but quietly contributing. Neeskens in real life is the complete opposite of the butcher image on the field. He is gentle, quiet, and a warm man. In his later years, he joined the World Coaches Program of the KNVB Dutch Football Association, traveling the world to train coaches in developing countries. He finds joy in helping the community more than the glory of the past. On the field, he was the one who cleaned up the mess for his teammates, and off the field, he continued to be the one who quietly built the foundation for the next generation, a silent sacrifice throughout his life. However, a sudden bad news shocked the world. On October 6, 2024, while on a training mission in Algeria, Johan Neeskens suddenly passed away at the age of 73. His passing just recently was a huge shock, reminding us that the heroes of the past are gradually leaving this world. Rob Rensenbrink was an alien in the star-studded Ajax and Feyenoord squads at the time, having played in Belgium, nicknamed the Snake. Rensenbrink possessed incredible dribbling skills and a fearsome ability to score goals. At the 1974 World Cup, he was a perfect fit on the left wing, but fate always seemed to tease him, as he was often overshadowed by Cruyff's aura. After 1974, Rensenbrink became the greatest legend in the history of the Anderlecht club, Belgium. The climax of his tragic career was the shot that hit the post in the 1978 World Cup final, a moment that if it had gone into the net, he would have become the top scorer and the Netherlands would have been the world champion. He retired and went into hiding, living an extremely private life away from the media, completely different from the noise of the modern football world. Rensenbrink led a simple life in the countryside of Oostzaan. He enjoyed fishing and gardening and rarely gave interviews. He carried the fear of the hit the post with him for the rest of his life, but faced it with silence. In his later years, he battled the terrible disease spinal muscular atrophy, PSMA, which gradually immobilized the once flexible Snake Man. On the pitch, he was a melancholy artist, and off, he was a recluse. Rensenbrink's silence was a sad note in the brilliant symphony of Dutch football. The quiet artist's journey has come to an end. On January 24th, 2020, Rob Rensenbrink passed away at the age of 72 due to complications from muscular dystrophy. He left with regrets of a glory that was just a hand's breadth vertical. Post away. Johnny Rep was the hot boy of the team that year. At the age of 22, he brought youth speed and the ability to penetrate the penalty area sensitively. With 4 goals in the tournament, Rep was a dangerous spearhead, always knowing how to shine at the right time. He was the embodiment of the gallantry and romanticism in the Netherlands, attacking style of play. After the World Cup, Rep ventured to Spain, Valencia, and France, Bastia Saint-Étienne becoming the Dutch player with the most goals in World Cups, a record that still stands today with 7 goals. His life was a series of days enjoying the halo romantic love affairs, and also stumbles after retirement. He once admitted to going through difficult financial periods and loneliness after leaving the field. Johnny Rep is a jovial old man, still charming as ever. He lived in a camper van for a while, seeking freedom before settling down. He often appears on reminiscent shows, recounting old dressing room jokes with a nostalgic smile. Lately, his health has declined somewhat due to heart problems. A striker who always seizes opportunities on the pitch in real life, Rep also lives an impromptu life, win all or lose all. That generosity is both a gift and a challenge for his old age. Today, at the age of 73, Johnny Rep is still living out his old age in his hometown, despite his health being much weaker after having to have a pacemaker inserted at the end of 2024. He is a living witness, a record holder, and the wittiest storyteller of a bygone golden age. Van Hanegem was the perfect complement to Cruyff, slow, taciturn, but with a banana pass that ripped through defenses. He played with a special motivation, a personal vendetta against the Germans stemming from a family tragedy during World War II. On the pitch, he was a rock, mentally tough and cunning, but also artistic. After a glittering playing career at Feyenoord, he became a successful coach, and later, one of the Netherlands' most incisive journalists. He was known for his outspoken, grumpy personality, and was not afraid to criticize anyone, even his star players. Van Hanegem's life is a story of overcoming loss. His father and brothers died in war. He beat prostate cancer in 2018 with the same tenacity he used to tackle football. He is affectionately known in the Netherlands as the lovable old fool, who always tells the truth even when it hurts. His hunchback on the field seems to be the burden of the past that he carries, but also his steadfast stance against all the storms of life. He is thorny and unapproachable, but inside is a passionate heart that loves football. Today, at 80, Willem van Hanegem remains a powerful voice in the Dutch press. He remains lucid still, sharp, and remains an eternal symbol of Feyenoord, reminding the younger generation of the value of resilience. Johan Cruyff was not just the captain. He was Saint Johan, the soul of the midfield, and also the sharpest spearhead of the 1974 Dutch squad. With his 1974 Dutch squad, 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 with his 1974 Dutch. Dancing, dribbling the famous Cruyff turn, and tactical thinking ahead of his time, he turned football into a performance art. Cruyff's performance at the age of 27 demonstrated absolute excellence, making the whole world bow down in admiration to the concept of all-round player. After the bitter but great defeat in Munich, Cruyff continued to play at the top level for Barcelona, and then Ajax and Feyenoord. But his greatest legacy lies not only in his goals, but in the revolution he brought about as a coach. He created the dream team at Barcelona, laid the foundations for the La Masia Training Academy, and reshaped the modern football mindset that later Pep Guardiola and Xavi inherited. His life was a series of breakthroughs, from refusing to wear Adidas three-stripe shirt because of his contract, with Puma, to naming his son Jordi in the heart of Catalonia during the Franco dictatorship. Off the pitch, Cruyff was a family man, but also full of personality and stubbornness. He was famous for his smoking habit, which became an iconic image, but also the seed of disaster for his health later. After undergoing heart surgery in 1991, he replaced cigarettes with Chupa Chups lollipops, a lovely but also haunting image of the fragility of life. He devoted his final years to the Johan Cruyff Foundation, bringing sport to disabled children, living true to the humanitarian philosophy he pursued. There was an uncanny resemblance between Cruyff on the pitch and Cruyff off it, always in command, always in control, never accepting mediocrity. He lived the way he played, intelligent, stubborn, and artistic. However, that glorious journey had to stop. On March 24, 2016, Johan Cruyff passed away at the age of 68 after a battle with lung cancer. His departure left an unfillable void in the football world, but his philosophy has become immortal. Jongbloed was the most controversial, but also the most appropriate choice for coach Rinus Michels. At 33, he looked more like a grocery store owner than an athlete with the odd number 8 on his back. He often advanced out of the box, played as a sweeper keeper, and sometimes caught the ball with his bare hands. He was the embodiment of the radicalism of total football. He continued playing until the age of 45, an incredible record. But his life was marred by a tragic end. His son, Eric Jongbloed, also a goalkeeper, died on the pitch after being struck by lightning in 1984. John had to witness the horrific scene. After the tragedy, he lived a quiet life, finding joy in fishing rather than football. Jongbloed was a simple man, uninterested in fame and fortune. He once refused to join the great Ajax, just to have time to go fishing. The pain of losing his son changed him forever, turning him into a father who was deeply saddened but still tried to live courageously. On the field, he is an eccentric goalkeeper, lonely in the middle of a large goal. In real life, he also has to bear the greatest pain of his life alone. The image of him catching the ball without gloves is the way he faces life, naked and without any protection. The journey of the legendary goalkeeper has come to an end. On August 30th, 2023, Jan Jongbloed passed away at the age of 82 after a long illness. He left behind a story of an ordinary man who did extraordinary things. Ruud Krol was the definition of elegance in defense. With his long, romantic hair and calm demeanor, he not only defended but also initiated attacks. With precise long passes, his powerful long-range shot against Argentina, or his runs down the flanks were classic lessons for the modern fullback position. After the golden era of Ajax, Krol moved to Italy to play for Napoli and became an idol there, a rare thing for a foreign player at that time. After retiring, he became a real missionary of football coaching all over the world, from Egypt, Tunisia, to South Africa, where he led Orlando Pirates to a historic treble. He became a true global citizen. Krol lived the life of a great nomad, adapting to every culture. He chose not to settle in the comfort of his native Holland, but to venture into the dark continent or the Arab world. He was a man on the move. His versatility and adaptability on the pitch, able to play in all positions in defense and midfield, carried over into his life, helping him succeed in different football environments around the world. Today, at the age of 75, Ruud Krol still retains the elegant demeanor of a gentleman. Although he is not currently leading any team, he is often invited to be an advisor and expert, bringing the experience of a wandering life to pass on to the next generation. Wim Suurbier was the man who ruled the right wing. He was the first to introduce the modern overlap. Quick, strong, and incredibly agile, Suurbier was an integral part of the Ajax and Dutch national team machine. His career was tied to Ajax and then his years in the US with his former teammates. He was known as the funniest person on the team, always teasing his teammates to ease the tension before big matches. He and Cruyff were close friends, sharing both glory and private secrets. Suurbier's post-retirement life was not smooth sailing financially and in terms of his marriage, but he always maintained an optimistic smile. He lived simply, sometimes in poverty, but never lost his cheerful and generous personality. On the field, he runs non-stop to support his teammates, and in real life he is always the one who brings laughter and joy to others, even though sometimes he himself is facing difficulties. But then that laughter had to stop. On July 12, 2020, Wim Suurbier passed away at the age of 75 after a brain hemorrhage. He went to see his close friend Cruyff, leaving behind grief for those who loved his smile. Ari Hahn played as a defensive midfielder and later as a libero. His greatest mark was his thunderous long-range shots that tore through the opposition's net, like the goal against Italy and West Germany in 1978. He was the one who provided the breakthrough when the combination play was stuck. Hahn had a glittering career at Anderlecht after leaving Ajax. As a coach, he was a nomad like Krol, particularly successful and popular in China and Albania. He had a strong personality, sometimes eccentric in his coaching style. His daring long-range shots reflected his adventurous nature, daring to challenge himself in new lands like early Chinese football. Today, at the age of 76, Ari Hahn has retired after many years of traveling across continents, lives a private life, but is still remembered as one of the most powerful kickers in football history. Wim Jansen was not flashy, but without him, the total force machine would collapse. He was the man who connected the lines, patched up the gaps, and kept the tempo. Cruyff himself once said Jansen was one of the few people who truly understood football. It was he who was fouled, leading to the penalty in the first minute of the 1974 final. A legend of Feyenoord. He once shocked when he went to play for rivals Ajax at Cruyff's invitation. He got hit in the eye with a snowball on his debut day. He later became Celtic coach and was the one who discovered Henrik Larsson. In his later years, he suffered from dementia, a heartbreaking end for a super football brain. On January 25, 2022, Wim Jansen passed away at the age of 75. Although his memory may have betrayed him in his later years, his memory will never fade in the hearts of his fans. Wim Rijsbergen was the man who stayed behind to lock the door and fill the void left by the dashing forward Ruud Krol. At the age of 22, he played all 7 matches in the role of a classic stopper. Fierce, uncompromising, and extremely disciplined, Rijsbergen was the solid foundation, the one who did the hardest work so that the artists above could feel secure in embroidering and weaving brocade. After his triumph with Feyenoord and 2 brilliant World Cups, Rijsbergen made a bold move. He crossed the ocean to America to play for the New York Cosmos. There, he became a teammate of gods, such as Pelé and Franz Beckenbauer, enjoying the lavish American football show after hanging up his boots. He became a true missionary of football, leading teams in low-lying areas such as Trinidad, Tobago, Indonesia, and the Solomon Islands. Rijsbergen was a man of business, serious and unpretentious. His life was a constant flight between continents. He devoted much of his post-playing life to developing football in underprivileged areas, demonstrating an open mind and a tireless dedication. On the field, he is the one who silently covers for his teammates to shine. In real life, as a coach, he continues to stand behind the scenes to support small football teams to rise. A remarkable consistency in this man's personality. Today, at the age of 73, Wim Rijsbergen has retired to the Netherlands after suffering a mild heart attack a few years ago. He is still remembered as one of the best defenders of his generation, having played alongside both Saint Johan and King of Football Pelé. Piet Keizer arrived at the 1974 World Cup as a living legend of Ajax Cruyff's rival and most consistent partner. However, the tournament was a low point. In his career as coach, Rinus Michels preferred Rob Rensenbrink. Keizer played just one match against Sweden. However, his presence on the bench was a symbol of the terrifying depth of the squad that the Netherlands possessed at that time. Piet Keizer was a symbol of absolute loyalty, a one-club man who played only for Ajax throughout his career. However, immediately after the 1974 World Cup, a conflict with coach Hans Krij over tactics led him to make a shocking decision to retire immediately at the age of 31. He completely broke away from professional football, refusing all offers to become a coach or commentator, choosing to disappear from the spotlight. Keizer lived an extremely private, even mysterious life. He became a player, agent, but operated very quietly. He was described as intelligent, sharp, but somewhat bitter about the world of football, which had changed too much since his time. He valued privacy to the extreme, rarely appearing in public. On the pitch, Keizer was a proud artist with magical stepovers. Off the pitch, that pride led him to leave the game when he lost his proper respect, rather than compromise. He was a lonely genius. However, the journey of that genius ended in infinite sorrow. On February 10, 2017, Piet Keizer passed away at the age of 73 after a short battle with lung cancer. His departure made people suddenly realize Dutch football owed him a more worthy honor when he was alive. René van de Kerkhoff, along with his twin brother Willy, played mainly a strategic reserve role for the Orange Hurricanes at the 1974 World Cup. However, he was brought on in the second half of the fateful final against West Germany, hoping to turn the tables. Although he only played 45 minutes of the tournament, René's speed and energy signaled the rise of a big star in the near future. After 1974, René became a great legend of PSV Eindhoven. He and his brother Willy continued to shine brightly at the 1978 World Cup, where they reached the final once again. Pelé once selected René as one of the 125 greatest living players, a great honor that proved his class was not limited to the borders of the Netherlands. René and Willy are inseparable. They are the most famous football twins in the world, doing everything together from business to social events. René is a cheerful, sociable, and successful businessman. He always keeps an optimistic smile, even though his team fell at the gates of heaven twice. On the pitch, René was always rushing forward at breakneck speed. Off the pitch, he lived an equally dynamic life, constantly moving and evolving. His close bond with his twin brother also reflected the great team spirit he always displayed. Today, at the age of 73, René van de Kerkhoff is still healthy and regularly appears in the stands of the Philips Stadium to cheer on PSV. He is a living treasure of Dutch football, a testament to the fact that failure is sometimes just a stepping stone to creating a lasting legend. Rinus Israel arrived at the 1974 World Cup as a seasoned veteran, the captain who had lifted the European Cup with Feyenoord in 1970. Although he had to sit on the bench for the Krol-Rijsbergen duo, because of Michel's Ajax-first philosophy every time he was on the field. 3 matches steal. Rinus always showed his authority and unrivaled aerial ability. He was the perfect plan B when the team needed tenacity and physical strength. After retiring, Rinus moved into coaching and achieved great success at Feyenoord Dynamo Bucharest, and also in the UAE. He is known for his iron-disciplined coaching style, true to his nickname as a player. He is also a sharp, television commentator often giving out frank and controversial comments without any respect for anyone. Rinus Israel is the embodiment of the older Dutch generation. Hard-working, straightforward, and unpretentious. He has a comfortable family life, but keeps a certain distance from the tabloid media. He values traditional values and constantly reminds the younger generation to be professional. The nickname Rinus of Steel suited him perfectly. Tough on the pitch, uncompromising, in coaching and straightforward in speech. He was a man who never bent under pressure. Now, at the age of 83, Rinus Israel is enjoying a peaceful old age, although his health does not allow him to appear on television as often as before. The name Ijzeren Rinus is still a towering monument in Rotterdam, symbolizing the indomitable fighting spirit of Feyenoord. Theo de Jong is not the first name mentioned in the starting lineup, but he is the trump card up Rinus Michel's sleeve. In the group stage, he scored the winning goal in a 4-1 win over Bulgaria. Notably in the final, when the Netherlands were behind, he was brought on to replace Wim Rijsbergen to increase the attacking firepower. De Jong's aggressiveness and ability to shoot from long range are the Orange Storm's secret weapons. After leaving Feyenoord, De Jong had an interesting nomadic career playing in Hong Kong Seiko, an unusual destination at the time. His coaching career was even richer, leading clubs and teams all over the world, from Cameroon, Iran, Mongolia to Nigeria. He was the one who brought the Dutch football philosophy to the most remote lands. Theo de Jong was an open-minded and adventurous man. His acceptance of playing in Asia in the 1980s showed that he was not afraid of challenges and exploring new cultures. He has a son, Dave de Jong, who also took up football following in his father's footsteps. His role as a stuntman on the pitch seems to have trained him to have a great ability to adapt. Doesn't need to be the brightest star, but he is willing to go anywhere, do anything to contribute to football. Today, at 77, Theo de Jong retains his lucidity and love of football. He is still involved in advisory work and regularly reunites with his former teammates from 1974, recounting the story of his iconic goal and those brief but glorious moments in the World Cup final.